Hi there, I'm Ani Anderson with the Somatic Coaching Academy. I'm so excited that you're joining me today for this live stream or watching the replay. If you've watched a few of our recent videos, you know that we are just getting started with our social media presence, and you might be finding us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on YouTube. Wherever you are, please go ahead and click the like and or subscribe button and find us on those other platforms as well. You can look us up, Somatic Coaching Academy, and you'll find us. And go ahead and click the like button so that you can find more training when we go live, because we're going live 2 or 3 times a week over the course of the next few months. So today we're talking about how to talk about what you do. And I think this is a really great topic, not only because I get asked about it all the time, but pop open any social media if you're an entrepreneur and you'll see ads for talking about what you do and landing clients and all of that stuff. I have a different vantage point on this conversation this year than I did last year, because this year I have been working with some really high performing entrepreneurs who are some of them in the multiple 7-figure range. And so I've gotten to see behind the eyes of many, many entrepreneurs at this point, entrepreneurs who are just starting out, who are making their first, sales, entrepreneurs who are striving to hit the 6-figure mark, those that are going into multiple 6 figures, and those that are enjoying multiple 7-figure businesses. So a really broad spectrum. And one of the things that I'm really interested in right now is that this conversation about talking about what do I do and how do I articulate that to other people, it comes up no matter what entrepreneurial range I'm looking at. And I think that that's interesting, because no matter where you are in your own journey, we have a tendency to, look at other people and compare ourselves to them. And there can be some really big shame and uh, stuff that comes up to add to our lack of clarity in terms of thinking that we should have figured this out by now, or we should have a better answer to this conversation if we're at a certain point in our journey, or whether we're just getting started. It doesn't matter where you are. There's like all of this stuff that comes up for people around this topic. And so actually today with this video, I'm going to have a different kind of conversation with you. Sometimes when we do these video feeds, we come and we teach you something. We do a lot of training. This isn't going to be one of those times. And here's why. I want to have a conversation with you. I want to get in the inquiry with you. I think there's so much benefit to being in the inquiry, whether it's with ourselves, whether it's in a colleague relationship, or with our clients, or with our potential clients. What a huge awareness to be able to have a conversation where we're not coming as the expert that has all the answers, that knows exactly what to do, because then all kinds of interesting solutions can be co-collaborated with the people who we're having a conversation with. So that's the energy where we're going to have this conversation today. I'm inviting you to show up like that and be curious and be in the inquiry with me, rather than me just telling you the solution. Okay. So here's one of the interesting things I've noticed. I've noticed that when we go out in society, most of the places that we go in America, it's one of the first questions that people ask you. They'll ask you their name, and then they'll ask, what do you do? And so how about you? Have you noticed that as well? Maybe you haven't. Maybe, for you, you notice it in certain circles and not in all circles. For me, most of the circles that I travel in, I think that question comes up just about number 2. What's your name and what do you do? So that's an interesting reflection right there. Like, why do we do that? Where does that come from? How did that start? What part of our culture did that come from? Like all of these questions. I've heard some interesting perspectives myself around where that conversation comes from, the what do you do question. And I'd love to know for you too. So whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording, you can pop that in the chats. I'd love to talk to you about your insights into that question. So the next thing is like, okay, so do I even want to have that conversation with other people? And I think that's a really valid place to be in the inquiry, because as we're talking about where did that question even come from, we're recognizing that it's a societal pattern we may or may not want to have any kind of relationship with. So wow, like all of this, all of a sudden, we have two really interesting things to think about. Like, where did this even start? Do I want to be a part of this conversation or not? So probably the answer is sometimes for you, or maybe it's all the time. For me, it's sometimes. Sometimes I want to be a part of this conversation of what do I do? Sometimes I want to understand what another person does for a living. I want to see how I fit in relationship with that, see if there's any collaboration we could do. Maybe this is a potential client. I don't know. So sometimes that question actually is a conversation that I want to have because I want to understand more about what they do as a vocation in the world to see where I fit. So for you, what is it for you when you want to be a part of that conversation of what do I do? What is it that you want? And I think that's a really good question to be asking ourselves. What is it that I want from this? And also, what is it that another person might want from the conversation that we're having? So I'm going to make some assumptions following this thread because already we've had some interesting, thoughts come up around this topic, but now I want to just entertain the idea that maybe we are in a relationship with somebody who might be a potential client. Okay, so I'm going to have that level of conversation as we continue to talk about this. Oh, hey, Kasha, it's good to see you. Thanks for saying hi. So let's say that you're having a conversation with somebody. Let's just say it's maybe it's online on a virtual event, or maybe you're actually in person with somebody, and you start to talk about what do you do, and you get a little flustered and you don't know what to say. So does that happen for you? First of all, I want to give you a different perspective to maybe consider. Have you ever considered having a conversation more about who you are? So when I say that, what comes up for you? So one of the things that might come up is, how do we do that? Well, that's an interesting question right there, isn't it? Because we're just not used to having conversations about who we are. Well, what would that sound like? What would that look like? I'm not really sure, but it's an interesting inquiry, right? And that's what we're doing during this conversation right now. We're having this like inquiry kind of conversation. Yeah. So what if you were to talk about who you are? Would we slide right back into what we do? Would we stay in the being? I mean, I don't know, but that's interesting right there. What if we were actually interested in the other person in terms of who they are? How would we find that out without asking, what do you do? I don't know. I mean, it's interesting questions, right? Hey, Janice, good morning. So we're in the inquiry with this conversation. This is not me telling you what to do. This is us having an interesting conversation because I think we're really looking at this idea that we may actually want a societal shift where we don't just say, what's your name? What do you do? Right out of the gates. That maybe there's more interesting things that we have to talk about with ourselves. So let's just assume, playing along with this scenario, that we are at our virtual or our in-person event. We're meeting people and we want to find out more about who they are. I'm curious to know what questions you might ask. What might you want to relate? What might you want to know about the other person? And where in this conversation right now are you feeling a little uncomfortable? Where in this conversation right now are you feeling some unknown? Because there is, right? There's this idea that we might have a conversation where we don't exactly know where we're going to go next. And that I think is really interesting. I've been thinking recently about how on our path to growth, a lot of times people want to see a trajectory of open doors laid out in front of them, when in reality, all we need to see, or all we really can see at a time, is one cracked door. And then we have to open that door. And then we'll see another cracked door. And then we have to open that door. And then we'll see another cracked door. It's not like on the trajectory of growth, we're going to see a line of open doors. We want to see the end. We want to see the trajectory. We want to see the whole path laid out in front of us. What if it was going to be okay? What if we could feel safe? What would we have to do to feel safe in a conversation where we weren't quite sure exactly what doors we were going to open up next? So that's kind of what I want to leave you with, the idea in this inquiry conversation we're having today about the idea of what do you do? A lot of times when people ask that question of me and they want an answer, what they're really looking for is how to get clients, how to gain clients. And so I encourage you, because you don't actually need to know how to answer that question in order to get clients. You don't. That's not a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing. So, what if instead you could be in the inquiry and just see an open door and ask somebody about who they are and not know what's going to happen next and see where that conversation goes? What if enough of us did that? I wonder what it would change. I wonder if we would still 10 years from now be having this conversation where we're constantly going, how do I articulate what I do? Maybe it's not really, all that important. And maybe we can be having a different conversation. So this was a different kind of live stream. I'm not telling you what to do. We're in the inquiry. I really like that. I'd like to do more of those. So how is this for you? What insights are you having? What questions did this bring up for you? How does it feel? Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Did you like it? Are you excited? Those are the kinds of things I want to hear in the chat. So go ahead and put those below. And we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a thumbs up or subscribe wherever you're watching us right now. If it's on LinkedIn, if it's on YouTube, or it's on Facebook, you can find us on any platform at Somatic Coaching Academy. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.